Ludus Vulpes. Welcome to Ludus Vulpes. My name's Kirsty.
And I'm Phil.
You join us as we run through the good, the bad and the ugly of Ark Nova.
This one here, the entire box that I'm hiding behind and having to lift my chin
I do believe I could probably fit in the box.
to get to the top. Now, this might be the biggest box lid we've had on the table since we started doing these videos. And as you know, the good, the bad and the ugly are reserved for those heavier games with a slightly weightier price point. And we want you to have a real good understanding of how they stack out and whether it's something you should invest in. Mm-hmm. So without any further ado, we're going to go through a brief explanation of how the game of Ark Nova is played.
Yes.
As we go down to the table, you're going to notice a few additions to our particular collection. Mm-hmm. Outside of the game, we've got some token trays, and we've also got these nifty little card holders. Oh look, my card's being held.
Cards and resource holders.
Yeah, cards and resource holders.
All that money.
And these have been printed, and we picked them up from Geeky Meeple's 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. If you go to Facebook or eBay and search for Geeky Meeple's 3D printing and type in Ludus Vulpes 5, you'll get a discount on your order.
5% discount.
Yes.
Which Kirsty always forgets. Okay, without any further ado, let's get this box out of the way and let's get down to the table for a brief explanation of how Ark Nova plays. Phew, I'm out of the shadow now.
Yes.
Some light on my face.
I don't think you got any worry about going too pale right now.
You never know. Okay, so in front of us here we have the game of Ark Nova set up. Actually, we have the game of Ark Nova just finished, which is a game we played recently.
Yes, it is.
We left it set up so that you can have a look at how the board setup plays. Now, there are some things that I'm not going to do a full rules explanation here.
No.
We're just going to go through the basics of how the game plays to give you an understanding. So over the course of the game, you are going to be building your zoo. And your zoo sits in front of you on your own player board. Mm-hmm. And that player board, you're going to be putting these little pens out. And the pens come in all various shapes and sizes from 1 through to 5.
Yep.
And they hold different size animals. Animals have a size here. So this one is a size 5, needs a 5 pen. There's also an alternate pen for this eagle, which is the aviary. And it only takes up 1 space in an aviary. And the aviary is also a 5-space token, but then can fit a lot of birds into it.
Because I like to mix in an aviary.
Yeah, like that.
Yep.
So you're building areas on your map, and you are collecting cards of animals and projects, whether they're conservation projects or people who are sponsoring your zoo to do more and exciting work.
That's an example of a conservation project.
That's a conservation project, and just in front of Kirsty, she's got her large animal sponsorship. Do you see?
Oh yes,
it's
this
the
one
Wazza Large Animal Program.
Here, just here.
So they all work in slightly different ways, and then around them, probably about 70%, 60% of all the cards are going to be animals for you to populate your zoo with. Yes. They have a cost and a size of pen and maybe an additional condition. So this Sumatran tiger, majestic beast that it is, likes a 4-size pen next to 2 pieces of water, 2 spaces of water. It's thirsty. Actually, I believe they swim. So there you go. It likes to have a little bit of a paddle. It's basically a sunbather. So it goes for a swim, comes out and bathes in the sun. As you're building your zoo, you've got some sort of bonuses that you're going to be releasing off your board, which is great.
In the forms of cubes.
Yeah, and as you progress through the game, we're going to be working our way up 3 progression tracks. So we've got the sort of reputation of the zoo in the centre, which goes from 1 to 15.
Blue all the way through to purple at the end here.
And you've also got the tickets, which is the attraction of your zoo.
Which is, funnily, the gorgeous ticket-shaped track around the edge.
Now, that's going to dictate how much income you get when you take a break. And then at the top, you've got the conservation track, which is these green spaces.
The income being the black area, and the conservation being the green.
Okay. So One of the interesting aspects of this game is over the course of the game, when you play an animal, you'll increase your attraction in the zoo. When you complete conservation projects, as we have here, you'll actually increase the conservation levels of your zoo, the conservation reputation is there, and the reputation track will progress based on sort of research and ideas that you're progressing. Partnerships with universities, academic papers, those kinds of things will get you more reputation. So, but the conservation projects, as you progress them, these counters will move up the tickets and up the conservation track, and the game end is triggered when, for example, they share a location. So the location here in the green is 3 ticket spaces. So as long as the black is in one of those 3 ticket spaces, that will trigger the end of the game. You'll move to end game scoring. End game scoring will potentially progress some tickets a little bit further, and the conservation track, you take that one along a little bit further as well. And then to establish your score, you're going to slide this into the lowest possible slot, count the difference, and that's your score for the game. So that's a little bit about how the game works. To actually make all that happen in front of you, at the bottom of your board, you have a series of actions. Actions have different power levels, 1 through to 5. Wherever you take that card from is the power level of the action. So this is the sponsor's card. And this is at level 5, so I could play this level 5 sponsor with that card. However, I could not play this level 6 sponsor with that card. That's fair to say.
Yeah.
After I've taken an action, I'm going to move that card into the number 1 slot, and all the other cards are going to move up in power. So just having a look at some of the others. Association allows you to interact with this association board just here, which you haven't mentioned. Association is where you're going to manage your conservation projects, either group-wide conservation projects down here, or individual conservation projects that players will have played up here. These will progress along and drop off the track as the game progresses, so you only get a limited opportunity to complete these conservation projects, and in fact in this instance I was the only person to complete these.
You were.
I played them. It also allows you to interact with universities and establish partnerships with other zoos in different continents around the world, and then if you've just got a few points to spend, you can just get 2 reputation on the reputation track. So association action allows you to interact with the association board, dealing with conservation projects, and partnering with universities and other zoos around the world. The build action allows you to, depending on the strength of it, buy one of the pens, whatever size it's at. So this could be a strength 4, so I could build a 4-size pen, which is just here. I have nowhere for it on my board, and put it out on my board. It must be adjacent to a piece that's already been played, and if it covers a bonus, there you go. If it covers a bonus that's on the board, you'll get that bonus immediately. Kirsty?
You have to place the pen so there's 2 sides. You have to place it with the number side up. It's very important that you begin with the number side up, because when you populate it with an animal, you have to turn it over to show it's no longer available.
That's true. And all good. So that's a build action, allowing you to build pens on your board. You've got the cards action, which is just the worst named action in the world. Like, please, we'll come on to this in the ugly anyway, but be cleverer with your name. Everything else makes sense, but that's just cards. Cards, you take a little break with your coffee cup, and you draw cards from either wherever your reputation is on this. Well, actually, no, from the deck on the level 1 and level 1 card, the non-upgraded card. You'll draw cards from the deck. We will explain in a minute. You'll draw cards from the deck. You can also take an action called Snap, which is associated with like crocodiles and stuff, and allows you to snap a card from anywhere on the board, which is kind of funny and fun. But typically you're going to be drawing cards, and you have to, a lot of the time you'll have to discard a card from your hand after you've drawn. So you draw 3 cards, put them into your hand, and then discard a card from your hand into the ever-growing discard pile. That's a break action. The break action is there, and it also progresses the coffee cup down, and when the coffee cup gets to here, we'll actually take a break. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. And the last action that we've not talked about is the Nanimals action, also known as the Animals action, but Nanimals are cuter. And this allows you to put animals in your zoo. And to put animals in your zoo, you
fulfill the requirements on the animal.
Yeah, you fill. Thank you. Kirsty can explain this one because I've lost English.
You need to spend 14 coins unless you have that partner zoo's continent. So obviously this one would cost me 3 less because I have the partner zoo in my board. So this would only actually cost me 11. I'd need a 1 space pen to put it in, which was actually this one that I used, and it was facing that way. And when I place this animal, into the zoo, I switched it over to show it was then occupied.
So that's the animals
He then
action.
comes into my little pile of animals. As you can see, there's a fair whack here. And he then gives me an ability. Most animals will give you an ability or an instant bonus. For example, the tiger that Phil was talking about gave you a reputation and 2 conservation spaces.
And 8 attraction points as well.
Yes, it did. Whereas this one gives me 3 attraction points, 2 hats, but it also allows me to speed up the break action and gain 4 coins. So actually, that ended up being a very profitable card for me.
It did.
It was also the cutest card ever. But we'll move on to that in a minute.
So that's the animals action. And that's all 5 actions in the game. 4 of those actions are upgradable, and you'll notice that both of us are upgraded onto the purple sides of the actions. And those purple sides allow you to extend the scope of what you can and cannot do. For instance, if I've not upgraded my association action, I can't form partnerships with zoos, only 2 zoos rather than 4 zoos. And for example, if I've not upgraded my build action, there are places on your map board that you just can't place something. And that's the same for all the cards.
The cards action, if you haven't flipped over your card action, you cannot increase your reputation past level 5. So you've done build cards. The sponsor action, so the basic sponsor allows you to play the sponsor at the level of which you are at. The upgraded one means it's the equivalent of a level or higher. So I've taken this one from level 3, but actually it acts as a level 4.
And also allows you to play a sponsorship card from within your reputation rather than from your hand as well.
Yeah. Also, if you don't want to play the sponsor card but you need some money or you want to, gain some benefits from the break, which we'll run through in a minute, on the basic side, the break just gives you break to where you are, so that'd be 3 spaces along the break track, and you gain 3 coins. On the upgraded side, you get twice the amount of coins, so it's quite a good money earner.
It is. Animals has a very similar effect when you upgrade it. It allows you to play 2 animals from your deck quicker. So you can play 2 animals at power 3 instead of power 5 on the non-upgraded card.
Yeah.
And also allows you to play an animal from within here. Top tip, actually, with both the sponsors and the animals, do not forget when you've upgraded the card, you can actually play a card from the row up to your reputation level.
So if you're holding something in your hand.
But you want to play something from out there,
yeah,
you still can. And you don't have to worry about going fishing for it in one of the 2 decks. Mainly the draw deck rather than the discard deck.
The other benefit from the animal is every time the animal reaches level 5, the animal card reaches level 5, you also get a hat every time you perform that action. And the hat obviously are the reputation track. So, those are the cards.
Yeah, and the last thing to talk about really is breaks. So everyone needs a break, and when that coffee cup...
Cute little coffee cup.
When the coffee cup hits this space here, actually on that space, you take a break. And the person who triggered that break will get one of these exciting little X tokens. The X token allows you to add to the power of an action, and you can add multiple tokens up to 5 because you can only ever hold 5 of these.
Yeah.
So you get an X. You then draw down your cards. You reduce your hand size to 3, or if you've got this particular upgraded university, just looking like this, it allows you to have a hand limit of 5 at the break. You discard any positive or negative tokens, which are Venom, Constriction tokens, or the ×2 token, which Kirsty absolutely screwed me on in the last game. Talk about that later as well. You top up the association board with universities and partner zoos. You discard the bottom 2 cards here.
Everything shuffles
down. Draw the next 2 cards in, and then you take income. Income is anything with a little hand underneath it. Please, sir, can I have more?
Just like that.
Just like that. And income basically goes with, you start with the value of wherever your attraction is. So this would get me 18 coins, whereas Kirsty will be on
29
coins. We'll put that back up there.
Yeah,
29 coins. So that's the base income. If you've got any of these wonderful little kiosks, you'll notice Kirsty has a
1, 2, 3, 4,
literal
5.
stack. They get you an additional coin for every pen they're placed next to.
Yeah.
There are other types of income. So some cards have income on it, which might give you, for example, if you have this off your board, you would get a 2-space pen for free on the income phase.
Every time income is triggered.
So income is great and it gets you some cash into the zoo. Once the income's done, this goes back, and in this case to the 2-player part, and you just carry on playing from the next person's turn. And that is basically how the game will progress until 2 of our pawns cross over on the conservation and attraction track, at which point we trigger the end of the game. You'll also then trigger some end game scoring, so you'll have an objective card. That objective card will have a condition on it. This, for me, was to get my reputation up to 15, ideally. I did get my reputation to 15, which gave me 4 additional conservation points at the end of the game.
And the one that I selected, because you get given 2, and then at this point here, when someone reaches level 10, you have to discard one of them. So it gives you time to play the game a bit. The large animal zoo was the one that I selected. And I got a point for bearing in mind the number of large animals, and I managed to get 5 large animals in my zoo, which meant I got 4 conservation points at the end of the game.
Yeah. And then also, somewhere in your deck, you're likely to have, and this is my deck of cards, these are all the cards I managed to play in the last game.
And these are mine,
they just go on forever.
Cards and cards and cards.
But I also managed to get 2 conservation points from that, and I think Kirsty got 2 conservation points from hers as well.
Yeah, I did.
Giving us both 6 additional conservation points at the game end.
There, which was my...
talented communicator.
Yes. So that actually gave me an in-game bonus of an additional assistant quite early on. And it also meant at the end of the game, as long as I got my reputation track to above 9, I get a conservation point. And the other one that I had was 5 different continent icons somewhere, anywhere within my zoo, which I smashed as well.
Yeah, she did. So that is in essence the game. There are more rules. There's some fiddly rules in there. But actually, fundamentally, that covers most of the gameplay. Yeah. There are some great how to play videos out there already for Ark Nova. The rulebook is pretty good as well. Yeah, it's all right.
There's a couple of things.
There's a couple of fiddlers. We'll talk about those when we get to them. But fundamentally, that's how to play the game. That'll get you started. Let's go back and let's come off the board and let's talk about what we think about this game. So, let's start with the good.
The good.
Kirsty.
The good. One of the things there's 2 particular things that I really, maybe 3 actually, thinking of the one that's right in front of me. 3 things I adore about this game. The first being the ability, the fact that you can move around the cards to the different ability. I know I've done it in another game or a similar mechanism, but I cannot for the life of me remember which one it is.
And I
actually think it's quite a fresh mechanism rather than the roll of a dice or that sort of the way that you get to shape your future by the choices that you make. I know that's in a lot of games, but you are literally taking the cards into your hands and moving them. I love that about the game. The other thing which I touched on earlier was the fact that for new players and actually even for experienced players, if you're playing this game and you're given multiple objectives at the start and you're like, I don't know, I don't know what's the right one to do, I don't know what cards I'm gonna get, you don't know the hand you're going to be dealt, quite literally. So I really enjoy the fact that on this area on the track, the conservation track, someone has to get to 10 conservation points before you have to discard an objective. And I think that's really good because actually you can think you're going to go one way and then the cards are dealt and you go, actually, do you know what? I am so much better going with that objective instead. Can't think of it. I think my 2 were... the original 2 was I had a large animal and the other one was to gain as many microscopes into... Research icons, which looks like a microscope, into my zoo. So the board that I have has an ability which is, if it's connected, which I did on the very first move, each time you play an animal card, I can ignore 1 condition of my choice. That, with that objective... was ideal. And
was it the large animal project, which also allowed on large animals to ignore another condition? So
it meant I had the ability to ignore 2 requirements.
So, for example,
to build that animal.
For this grizzly bear, which requires you to have 2 predators and an upgraded animal card, Kirsty could pick the only one of those that she needs to to meet as a condition, because the other 2 were taken away by those 2 cards, which was just superb alongside that objective. It meant that you were almost certainly going to smash the objective.
However, I did start to panic about having enough space for the large animals at one point, because I, as you can see, tend to enjoy my kiosks. And kiosks are useful, and you want them touching as many pieces as you can, so every income round, they're giving you the extra boost of about between 5 and 10 coins. Isn't that bad from...
across the number of kiosks that you play. I might be lucky if I get 3, 4 coins, but it's fine.
So obviously, I've discussed that this is a fantastic mechanism in the game. It takes the pressure off the first few goes and lets people get into the game.
Yeah.
I've explained this mechanism. I just want to explain, this is the card. I'm in love with the social card. Because he's adorable, and if I could have a pet, I would have him. But I know that he is rare and not allowed to be pets, despite the ones that you see on YouTube. So I'm just going to enjoy the visual representation of him.
Okay, and
shall we move on to your good now?
When we talk about the visual representation, let's move on to a lot of the artwork that I think is, well, and actually a lot of them are photographs, but there is some digital artwork alongside the photographs, or maybe digitally enhanced or digitized photographs that are being touched up or made to look less photographic. Yeah. And it's going to draw comparisons to Terraforming Mars for that kind of style combination of photographs and digital art. And it's going to draw comparisons to Terraforming Mars for a couple of other reasons as well, that we'll talk about in a moment. But actually, it works. You've got animals, they look like animals, they are animals. There's some really nice pictures, nice photographs being chosen. The iconography is clear and easy to follow for the most part on all of the cards. And after you've played the game once, you'll be able to pick a card up and you'll know exactly what it does and how it interacts with your game, and how you are playing your game. So from a good, there is visually the game is really strong and works really well. Yeah, it is very stimulating. Another element of the good that I really like, which I saw first on Rise of the Ganges, is this end game trigger.
Okay.
Where you've got two tokens moving in opposite directions, and when they cross, that's the trigger for the end game. Now, Rise of the Ganges, pretty much game ends there. Everyone gets another turn, and normally the person who triggers the end game in Rajas probably is going to be the winner. Not always, but probably. Here, works slightly different because there's a real focus on end game points, which allows you to push, especially the conservation points, which are quite big slots, quite a long way around. So actually, in the very first game of this I played, I did not trigger the end of the game, but I still won the game by having a lot of bonus conservation points at the end of the game to just move things around. You might also get some things that boost your tickets. There's definitely a card that if you fill your board, you get 5 tickets at the end. We've both taken advantage of that over the course of the games we've played. In fact, I don't think it was this one, actually. It was the one we played the other day. So that end game mechanism is really nice and adds a bit of tension to that end game, starts to build as you get closer and closer. You do run the risk of a bit of a runaway winner, or feeling like there's a bit of a runaway winner at certain times in the game. Don't always think that's the case, but as Kirsty's already mentioned, this cards and the power mechanism on the cards is absolutely superb. It's a really nice way of playing the game. It allows you to control and dictate. You'll sometimes be taking sub-optimum moves because you need to.
You need to shift another
The
card.
break is fascinating because it's definitely a boon for everyone, because everyone gets income, everyone gets cash. But also, if you've just taken a ×2 token and you put it on the card that you were going to do twice, I was going to do an animals action twice and get 4 animals in my zoo. And Kirsty was like, no, you're not. I'm going to play my sponsor card for cash and I'm going to trigger the end game. Allegedly, trigger the break. Allegedly, no idea that was the case. I wonder.
You still beat me.
Anyway, but the break is great, and it's nice that income is triggered by all the players. You almost work in collaboration to push that coffee cup up. But there are times when you don't want the break to happen, when it will happen a little bit too soon for you.
Yeah, if you haven't quite got a card right where you want it ready for the next game.
Yeah.
Round.
And that's where something like these variable player boards are quite useful. So Kirsty had this income power here, and that income power allowed her to move two cards one at a time to slot 1 every income round, which really allowed her to dictate what cards are at the sort of 3, 4, 5 slots every time at the start of the next like after the income phase. It's really powerful. But I got this nice ability where I could just discard a card for cash, which is quite nice on my player board.
You had like an endless income stream.
Endless income stream.
One thing which I didn't mention, which I really like, is actually these are all like bonus tokens. They give you so much strength when you really need them, and when you don't have them, you miss them.
Oh yeah, they're painful. You don't have them.
I think actually, when you've played the game a few times and not only rely on them or get used to them, but it's really good having them there. And if you're missing it, I think that's a really good aspect of a game.
Yeah, and actually, you can play the game without them or without a lot of them, but you are handicapping yourself if you do.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
you will want to use them time and again, especially if you've got like a real opportune move that needs to be at level 5 before someone triggers the break, and you're like, go on then, I've got 2 of these little crosses, I can put them on my cards action and trigger the break before you do. So there's a lot going on and a lot to really like about this game. The interplay of cards is quite interesting. So, and you do have that kind of, you're building up this kind of continuous tableau. Like, I mean, this is the stack of cards. I've already shown you once, but I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 cards played in one game. Yeah, go on, why not? And that's giving you a great deal of flexibility in what you put into your zoo and how you trigger points from that. And it's worth experimenting. 18. So it's about somewhere around, I would have said off the top of my head 20, and I wouldn't have been far off. So it's worth experimenting, and it allows for quite divergent tactical choices. And that's interesting as well, because depending on the cards you end up in your hand, you've got this kind of, you've got 2 tiers of gameplay. You've got this overall strategic play of things you really need to achieve at certain points in the game. And then you've got this entire raft of like moment by moment decisions based on the cards you get.
Yes.
And because of the volume of cards and the variety of cards, that allows you to sort of change directions every now and again, which can be quite useful. But they're not big changes, because the next raft of cards that come in might mean that you just divert back again. So that, I think, are all my goods for the game, other than the actual production quality, which is superb. These little game trays are fab. Capstone Games just delivering on every game they've delivered in the last few years to like really high production standards, and certainly on the heavier games, some really interesting mechanical decisions in there as well.
Did we mention who the designer
was? We didn't. It's Mathias Wigge is the designer.
Sorry, Mathias. I meant to say it at the start. He stole it from me.
I didn't steal anything.
You did. You distracted me.
I'll steal victory every now and again.
Every time.
So that for me is my good for the game.
So, moving on.
Okay.
To the bad.
The bad. Do you go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I'll get it done. Over and done with. Where do I start? There's so many cards in this game. Yeah. There are certain cards that we've looked through and we know that they have almost like killer powers at the end, don't they? Yeah. I don't know where it is. There's one that you specifically had. Oh, it's called Determination.
It's on the Golden Eagle and the Bald Eagle, and allows you to, after finishing an action, take another action.
If you save that card to your last go, you've effectively, if you've got the ability with the bonus tokens, as the end of the game is triggered, got the ability to then put 4 animals out. And if you've got the right animals or the right abilities and the right triggers, that can make a 30-point difference.
I would like to say that all animals are the right animals, and here at Ludus Vulpes we make no bias decisions around which animals should and should not be in zoos. Okay. Actually, they should all be in the wild.
They should all be in the wild, technically, yes. So, anyway, there are a couple of cards that feel ever so slightly unbalancing. If you don't have them. And that might be because I've never had them and he's had them every time in a row.
Twice.
Yeah, exactly. But that
we've played this game 6 times.
That power move, it's almost like it doesn't matter what you do, you can't stop it from happening. And you can, and it's just, okay, go on then. And it really feels, it's almost like I don't know, for me, it's a bit like what was the point in playing?
That's
I
fair.
feel like
That's fair.
it feels like I've put so much effort in, and if you've got that one move at the end, it's always going to break it.
Yeah.
Unless I am so far ahead and I've done some magic move and been able to do animals with a ×2 and been able to go from here to be like, you know, past the 0 type thing. So you can't catch up even with that. It feels like it's almost like, oh, well, I've just wasted the last 2.5, 3 hours. 2.5, 3 hours, you hear me say? Yes.
I think that's very generous.
Oh,
it's
God.
It's 3 hours plus.
So obviously we've played it once as a 3-player.
Yep.
And all the rest of our experiences have been a 2-player.
5 times.
5 times. 5 times we've spent 3 hours on this game.
Or more.
If not more than that. And yeah, the first one might have been me getting used to the game a bit more and, you know, what does this icon mean? What does that mean? But it's, I don't know. You've come up with a solution for it, haven't you? and
so.
We haven't tried it yet, but I do agree it might actually work. So in the same way that the break track has a 4-player, a 3-player and a 2-player area. Your idea, Phil.
So on a 2-player game, I would start, instead of starting all the way back here on the income track, I would move these up to maybe around here. I'm really picking this because the 25 marker is set as a milestone in the zoo anyway. But I'd probably bring them here and here and start there for a 2-player game. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll talk about them when I get onto my bad. Unless there's anything, is there any other bads you want to talk about?
The only other one that I could really think of, I don't know if it's a bad. I don't think it's an ugly, so I'm going to mention it as a bad.
Okay.
So there was one question of which you had a double power on your board, and it was a card that gave you a university.
Yes.
Or an ability that gave you a university.
I basically ended up drawing 2 universities on the same turn.
What wasn't clear, and Capstone, you know, Mathias, if you want to tell us how it's done,
you're talking to
feel
a box.
Free. I'm just looking at your board.
Okay.
Let us know when you get the gain a university token. Oh, it was one of those, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was on
one of
my
the
board as
tokens
well.
on here.
Oh no, it was here. When I powered off my board. So when you gain that, do you gain it from this association board? In which case, if it's not there, I mean, it didn't affect the game anyway. But if it's not there, you can't take it, or do you gain it from the supply? I couldn't quickly find it in the rules. That's not to say it's not in there, but it's not clear either. And it's just one of those things. And actually, one of the things I would say, and I didn't mention in good, is the quick reference guides with this game are actually very good for the most part. But there are definitely fiddly little questions like that aren't answered in them, and I'd like to see them answered.
Like in the quick guide, it shows university. It will say university icon.
Yeah.
It doesn't say gain a university or select a university from the association board or select a university from the supply.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that. And it could simply just be the case of, oh, we hadn't thought about that. It could be that it hadn't quite, and it could just be us looking into something that's not there. But that just like, you're in the middle of a game, you need to know. If I didn't have those 2, I don't know, and then we've just broke, it's going to be a while until and then he snatches the 2 and I can't upgrade a card.
Yeah.
That is a big change to the gameplay for that entire round for me.
Yeah, you're going to probably race the break along then. That one.
So little, just that was one little, I think there was another one, but we couldn't remember. The kiosks must be placed, which is actually on the board. The kiosks must be placed 2 apart from each other. But we weren't sure if the pavilions had the same requirement.
Well, no,
it doesn't say it, and we couldn't find it. And another one as well is you may only build. So on the build card, whether it's on the upgraded side, because you can. It's the only time you can build two
multiple,
buildings.
not just 2, multiple.
Multiple, yeah. So build 1 or more different buildings. Now, a different building is
typically a different size, except where you have these 1 templates and you have pavilions and kiosks. Now the question is, are a pavilion and kiosk different to this 1 pen? Well, they clearly are, but they're also single size, which means typically across the rest of the game, like if you want to put multiple pens, you cannot put 2 pens of the same size.
Yeah.
And it's specific on size for difference. But the kiosk and the pen and the kiosk and the pavilion and pen are different buildings but the same size. So
but it doesn't actually specify anywhere whether they can or not.
And
it might just be a little thing that we haven't quite found yet, but maybe it's me, I ask too many questions. Because I do ask a lot of questions when I'm learning a game, and I do want to know the ins and outs of it. I'm really sorry, I apologise. But that was one of my bads, and it might just be I'm asking too many questions.
Okay.
On to yours. I'll shut up now.
So my bads are once again this deck of cards, both ends. The game makes you take cards, like 20 cards played, it makes you take cards. It makes you take a lot more than 20 cards because all of these, so this is our discard pile, which I will not count, but that's our discard pile.
I can do it if you want me to.
No, it's fine. There's a stack there, probably about 60 cards in there. I think it's about 230, 240 cards in total. The game forces you to take cards, and that's fine. In much the same way as you're trying to draw cards in Terraforming Mars to play into and to play onto your tableau to increase, your efficiencies, to increase your engine building, and to do actions on the shared board in Terraforming Mars, and you're drawing cards to do that and triggering that with resources. Very similar here. You're drawing cards, you want to get them played one way or another.
I'm not going to sing.
The problem is, and for me, this is the bad of both of those games, it means that long-term strategy around cards can be a real pain in the backside. Because there's no way of going fishing. It's really hard to go into that deck and find what you want. You've got to go to the deck again and again and again and again if you've got a particular thing in mind that you're gunning for. Yeah. Which means that I've just stopped bothering. I don't even bother trying to think of a long-term strategy around these cards. I play the cards that make most sense now and just get on with the game, which seems to work. I'll be, to be fair, but it means that I'm not even thinking about what cards I'm playing. I'm just, actually, that's a really good choice. I'll take it. Like, for example, if we'd had another turn, one of us would have taken this card because it's a really good choice. We both hit this condition of having like at least 5 different types of animals in the zoo.
That would have been a winning difference.
Yeah, it would have been a winning difference, that card.
The issue is, if you'd had one go, you'd have taken the card, but you wouldn't have been able to play.
Well, no, actually, to be fair, I'd have played this one, which is the last card I got, which would have given me 1 victory point for 3 universities.
Or what you're doing is you're taking both of them and do a large sponsor action, which would have given you both.
Yeah, possibly.
But you couldn't have taken the card.
Yeah.
That's the thing. In this game, especially at the very end, you're like, I need to do an association move, I need to do a card, like a sponsor move, and I need to play my animals. And those are the 3 things that are so crucial at the end. But you get one choice.
Yeah. So I think that's all right. I think that's all right. I mean, it's typically in a lot of games. But I think the problem for me is the fact that you can't easily push these cards around. You can't easily go fishing and get what you want. And I would have loved to have seen on maybe the cards action, seriously, this cards action should be like research or something, and allowing you to draw cards from the zoo. But also, there should be on the upgrade of it. I would love to have seen a draw 1 card from the top 10 cards of the discard pile, and then put those cards at the bottom of the discard pile, so you can go fishing in this deck for a card you might have seen that you go, actually, that'd be really useful for me. And you could have gone, oh, okay, yep, I'll bring that card into play. Yeah. It's not as powerful as taking 4 cards from the deck because you're not updating your hand. But if there's something there, it allows the cards to be more strategic and less responsive and tactical.
There are a couple of animals that will allow you to shuffle the discard pile and draw. But it's not the same as being able to physically see them.
Shuffle and draw, and that's my problem with it.
One thing to note on the cards, the colour depicted is for a specific reason. It shows you the percentage of the variety of cards. So that you've got mainly animals with 70% maybe animals, and then 15 and 15 of sponsors and conservation cards. So it gives you an idea roughly of how the cards are broken up as well. But
it doesn't give you any control over what comes out.
Not at all.
And we probably go through a third of that deck in a 2-player game. The length of the 2-player game is also, and Kirsty mentioned it, is a bad apps categorically. Yeah. This game is not a 3-hour. It doesn't give you enough value say to sit down for 3 hours and play 2 players. The flip side, the addition to that on a 2-player game that is less prevalent on a 3-player game, these cards become increasingly irrelevant later on in the game, which is the other reason for maybe a 2-player game starting further up on the income track, because you get to a point where you maybe don't have a use for 2 or 3 cards. I'll talk more about it in the ugly, but it's just a really frustrating way of ending the game, because you feel like you're getting less powerful as you get to the end, towards the end of the game, instead of more powerful.
You should be having more.
Yeah, and in fairness, most of the game you feel this power level increasing, but towards the end of the game you feel it decreasing again. It's like a peak and then starts to head down into the trough. And if you're lucky, you'll end the game at the peak. But typically in a 2-player game, that tips over the edge. So
it does.
For me, that's bad, and it would, I think that's an easy and fairly obvious fix.
Yeah.
And just allows for a slightly different way of playing a 2-player game.
We'll have to try it and let you know how we experienced it.
We will. Other than that, they're my bads, and there's not a lot of bads to be said about this game. I prefer it to Terraforming Mars. I feel like I've got a lot more control of what I'm doing than in Terraforming Mars, which I feel is just cards. Shout at me later. And that's my opinion, not everyone's opinion, and Terraforming Mars is a well-respected game. I think this is a better game. I think it gives you more interesting decisions more frequently. But overall, it's the bads are there, and they, depending on how you play games and depending on how often you play games, it's going to cause you frustrations with this game. But there are ways that you can potentially modify that to mitigate the bads. Yeah. And now, onto the uglies.
Ugly.
And just to clarify what the uglies are not bads. They're not things that make me shy away from the game. They're just things that I wish the game did better or did differently. And that's, I think, going to be, for me, that's kind of, I don't know, it's a fiddly and niggly bit. You could argue that these are bads. I don't think they...
Actually, maybe the rulebook ones should have been uglies, really.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a niggle.
But it's not to say the game isn't worth playing. This is, the uglies are there to just say, actually, these are things that I think the game just needs a bit of a tweak. Yeah. So can I start with my uglies?
Go on then.
Okay, I've got a few.
As I get comfortable.
Yeah. I'll talk quickly, it's fine. As you start to play the game, as you play the game a couple of times, you start to realise that, like all games, there's like an opening, a middle game, and an end game. And you start to realise that there's certain ways in which you should play them. And for me, the opening of this game has now become set. And Kirsty described it to me as you're just following a procedure now. And I am. I am following a procedure. I won't tell you what it is. You'll figure it out for yourself. I am following a procedure to get me into a good place to accelerate into the middle of the game. And all I do is the same things every time for the first, half an hour of the game. Yeah. Now, remembering that one of the bads that we had for this game, both of us, is that the 2-player game is too long. Yeah. And we spend half an hour getting to the setup point where we're ready to go into the mid-game. So, for me, that almost now forced structure, I am going to play it this way until I get to a certain point. There's no
other way of playing it.
Well, there are other ways of playing it, because we've played it different ways. But if you want to win, you probably need to follow that formula. Yeah. And that also is semi-true of the game end. The determination card is just way too powerful if you know what you're doing. If you get this Golden Eagle determination card, I actually got the Bald Eagle one there as well, which I think was just for discussion purposes yesterday. If you got the Golden Eagle or any of these 2 determination cards...
There's literally only 2 in the whole game of determination.
If you got either of these 2 cards, keep one of them until the end of the game.
Yeah.
Do not spend it. There is a huge temptation to spend it early. But if you get a last turn or you're triggering the game end with one of these 2 cards, you are going to be powering your tokens all the way around the board. You can easily put out somewhere in the region of between 25 and 30 attraction tickets on with the determination move. And that is game winning.
It is.
Not every time, but for the most part.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
Every time you've had that card, you've done it and you've won.
Yeah. And I've often carried that card from, I don't know, from early in the game, because it's just the way you want to end the game. Yeah. There is that conscious thought of actually, and I had to trigger it a little bit early yesterday because Kirsty was looking like she was going to end the game, so I had to trigger it early, but it still meant I won by 2 points, which was close, really tight game.
The closest we'd had so far.
Yeah.
I wasn't at a minus figure for the first time.
So that kind of forced structure to play well and to win, I think is an ugly, and it's a shame because there's a lot of good in the game, but those kind of things just go. You look at it and go, was it missed in playtesting? I'd be tempted to take the determination cards out of the deck, just so that isn't an end game strategy.
Or you can keep the bird, but just not play the determination.
No, it's on the card. Like, take them out of the deck. The birds are cute, but take them out of the deck.
But then you'd uneven the amount of birds that are available.
Maybe.
You'd just cover it over the sticker, wouldn't you? Don't worry, Matt, we're not going to
Don't put stickers on your games.
We're not going to ruin it.
It's not a legacy game. So that's one of my uglies. Another ugly is these cards, and I mentioned it in my bad, but I always said I'd talk more about it in the ugly. Especially in a two-player game, you get to a point where most of them aren't doing anything for you. You're probably going to work with the animals card. You're probably going to work with the cards. You're probably not that bothered by the build. Association can be quite useful. Sponsors, it's kind of hit and miss whether you're going to be using it. And the further on you get into the game, so let's say like Kirsty completely filled hers, right, the build card's out of the way.
Yeah.
All right, that was maybe for the last 2 turns, but it was still 2 turns.
And if I filled it and I've got animals in there, you can take the animals off.
You don't want any more sponsors unless you see sponsors like this, so that's just floating around doing very little. Animals, you're absolutely going to want. Cards.
But if you're full, like I was,
true.
build and animals are out.
Association very much depends on what's here. That might be out of the game for you as well, because you might have filled up these bits and you might be topped up on the hats, which I was. It leaves you with like 2 cards. The cards and the animals that continually maintain some form of relevance, but as Kirsty said, if your zoo's full, even the animals card is kind of pointless. And it happens, and it happens quite regularly in a 2-player game. The game goes on too long, making cards irrelevant, and I would have liked to have seen an alternate action on there or something, or a way of not getting to that point in the game where you're going, well, I'm just waiting for this animal card to get up here so I can play 2 animals.
Or you can use
I'm using my X's. And it's just like, these cards should become more relevant as the game goes on, not less relevant, and that to me is a real ugly in the game. It's just really frustrating that you get towards the end of the game, it's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to... The sponsors for cash. I'm going to sponsors for cash so I can move this up. Right, okay. I'm going to pass that to get an X. I'm going to pass that. I'm going to take some cards. I'm going to put some animals out. And you stop making decisions, but the game still goes on, and that's an ugly for me. They're my big uglies. They're the ones that really, really bug me. The other ones is just the volume of cards you're playing. They're just too many. Like it just feels like you end up with like, especially if you played a lot of sponsor cards, which I don't think neither of us did last time. But a lot of sponsor cards will trigger things happening as you play. And so you're constantly having to be aware of them. And when it's a 2-player game, it's quite nice because both of you probably remember what each other's got. But in a 3 or 4-player game, remembering that Bob over there has got the card that if you put herbivore into any zoo gives them 3 coins, and you put herbivore in, and because you are kind of playing single player solitaire, you don't necessarily declare, I'm putting a herbivore into my zoo, and Bob goes, oh great, I get 3 coins. Stuff
We're
like
good,
that.
Because I'll go, I'm putting a herbivore in, don't forget you need 3 coins.
But that's because we can remember each other's hands and what we've played, and we've talked about it as we've gone through the game. It's the same problem I've got with Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars, for me, magnifies it by having even more cards in a 2-player game on display. But that kind of thing just sort of can grind... it's a kind of game as well where if you miss 1 or 2 triggers, that could lose you the game.
Yeah.
It could definitely impact your score at the end of the game. So that, to me, is a bit of an ugly. They're my uglies, Kirsty.
Okay, I'll go into my uglies. So, at the end of the game, let's make a situation. Can you bring yours down, please?
I can.
So you're currently, you're winning by, that much, and I'm there. So your gap is bigger. So therefore you're winning because of the way that the score wins. Because we recently broke, and because I haven't spent much recently, because
Actually, you're actually winning there. I'd be there to be winning, because that's closer. Because that's going to go past.
I'm trying to make it so that it's close, but you're ahead at the moment.
That's true. That is now true.
That's fine. Okay. This is full. I can't build. I've got no animals to put out because there's nowhere for them to go. There's no point in me getting any cards because it's towards the end. I can't do anything with them unless it's a sponsor card. And really, as Phil said, the sponsors are better. I've worked really hard to get all my association workers out. I've worked really hard to get these crosses. I've worked hard to get my money. I've got 50 coins in here. That is worth diddly squat at the end.
I've got about 40. I've got about 45.
Nothing. Now, even if it was 1 conservation point per 10 things,
It'd be something.
it would be something. Because I have worked damn hard to get to that situation, to get to the point that my income is going to be that high, to get to the point where I've got every worker out. Phil didn't get every worker out. He didn't.
I did.
Or maybe he did. But there's one recently where he didn't, and I'd done it, and I pushed myself, and I got the X's. And it didn't matter what happened, I was still beaten. And it's not sore loser syndrome. It's you've put so much effort in to build all these resources, and then for them to be null and void, it feels like, wow, what was the point in doing that then? It's like, okay, the only way I can describe the end of this game is like you've been at a firework display and it starts raining and you've got this little firework and it's whizzing and whizzing and whizzing and it just goes, yeah, like the end of a Catherine wheel. Nobody enjoys the end of a Catherine wheel. It's just, dance squiggle. No one's interested. Yeah. And I can't help but, especially in a 2-player game, the end of the thing, it's almost like I feel that rather than it being one player and another player, it should be that, okay, your last move, I'm going to play this animal, okay, I'm going to play this animal, and then you play that animal, and then I play that animal, and so you can see it
yeah, it's getting closer.
Because otherwise it's like, Phil's gone here, whatever, and then I'm like, no, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't beat that, there's no
Phil's
point.
gone
Well, yeah, the other way.
there.
It's like, what's the point in me even having a go?
Yeah.
And it really feels, after so much, and 3 hours is a long time of hard work when you're trying to do everything you can to get these association workers out, to get your partnerships, to get your sponsors working so they play for the end of the game, to get these objectives, to then have absolutely diddly squat from everything you've worked hard for, from the resources, just feels like a letdown. And it really does feel like, I don't know if I can bother to play that again. Because I'm not getting any benefit from all the hard work I've put in.
I will say these objective cards as well. Like, you will always max these out. If you play well, you should always max them out. Yeah. You should. You absolutely should.
There's one, for example, when I had this board, which is every time you play an animal card, ignore one condition, which I discussed earlier. And then the objective card I had was have as many empty buildings. Like, I am not going to bother trying to get that objective because I can get more points by doing the animals.
But you've also got a second objective card, and it's normally balanced out fine. Seriously, like these objective cards, they're great. They're end game scoring, but they all score a maximum of 4 points, and you probably want to be maxing them out at 4 points every time for the end game. And you also, I would say, want at least 2 cards, 2 sponsor cards that give you some end game scoring as well.
So I played so hard with this one, with the last but one game, and this was the sponsors cards. You've got to get 10 sponsors out to get 4. And yes, I did it, but because you're clawing at sponsors, because bearing in mind, if that is 70, 15, 15 as a representation, but I don't know the exact numbers, but say it is, and you know they're out here and you're thinking, well, if Phil takes them, how do I know that the next ones that come through aren't all just going to be animals? I'm going to have to take it, even if it's just a sponsor card that I've got nothing else to play.
It is one of the advantages, but it also means that this part of the game becomes slightly meaningless as well. It's one of the advantages of getting your reputation up there, because then you can play a sponsor straight from here, which is great, but the problem there is it means that everyone just maxes that trail. I mean, we're at 14 and 15. Yeah. And there's no reason to not. It's easy to do, and there's absolutely no reason to not max it out.
This one is the bane of my life. I've had this objective card.
You'd have done it this time.
I've had this objective card for 4 of the 5 2-player games. No, actually, I had it in the 3-player as well. So I've had this one, and they've been shuffled. They have been dealt. I've had this card for every damn game except this one that I just played. And it's, you get a point for your connecting water spaces. You get a point for your rock spaces. You get a point for covering all border spaces. And you get 1 point for covering the entire zoo map. That, funnily enough, is much harder than it seems.
Unless you're playing the large animal strategy.
A power, yeah. And I hadn't. And I had that every time. It's disheartening, it is.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of things that are fair to say at this point in this Good, the Bad and the Ugly. I probably like this game a little bit better than you do.
Oh no, I love the game. I enjoy the game. There are I love the game. I love the play.
Theme.
I love the theme. I love the artwork. I enjoy the mechanism. I dislike the end. I think actually, if you could tweak the end and maybe the time, so like as you said with the 25, that's the two things I would change about this game. In a 2-player game, speed it up, almost like in Space Base. You've got the
light speed start.
Light speed start.
By the way, this game is nothing like Space Base.
No, but it's the only one I can think of that has a speeded ability, which gives you points, coins, income, etc.
But so many games have a modified 2-player start.
Yeah. Why not this one?
And there's nothing wrong with this game having it that would allow you to not feel semi-powerless towards the end of the game, and still give you plenty of options and plenty of things to do as you're closing in on the end of the game. It feels the end game at 2-player feels very much like one of our big criticisms of Boone Lake, which was by the end of the game there's nothing to do. You're just playing until the game ends. The problem with Boone Lake is that is the same at 2, 3 or 4 players. Whereas here at 3 players, because the game is in general faster, it's about an hour per player. It still takes 3 hours, but it's about an hour per player at 3 players. And that was the first time we played and we were learning it. The 3-player game actually feels faster than the 2-player game, and that's odd. That's really odd. I cannot recommend this game for 2 players. I can't. If you're going to play it with just yourself and one of the... We need to try
the speed it up.
We do.
And then we could maybe do a little video on that to explain if it does massively, rapidly change the game.
Yeah.
We haven't tried it yet. It's just something we were discussing last time we played this game and thought, actually, maybe that's what it needs. Because it is literally the length of time and the end of the game, that last move. It down. And last few moves that just go, ugh. It's like you plan to go out for a lovely picnic and a walk and you wake up and it's absolutely tipping it down. It's that feeling. It's that, okay.
But okay, so the game under its current state, I would not recommend for 2 players. If you just play you and another person on a regular basis, there are other games that do 2 players better.
Yeah.
However, if you're going to play this at 3 and 4 players, it comes with a recommendation because actually it feels pacier, it feels more challenging, and it feels like you're active all the way through the game. It's a better game at 3 and 4 players. And you're probably
getting 2 more cards as well.
Yeah, you're probably cycling more cards and seeing more cards, getting more opportunity to play cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, at 3 and 4 players, this is a good game. This is a game worth playing more often. At 2 players, I don't feel like it delivers on what is quite a high price tag if you're going to be playing 2 players. Yeah. Whereas if you're going to play with a group of 3 to 4 players on a regular basis, absolutely, this is a good game to go out and pick up.
I can't imagine what this would have been like to play at Essen. There were queues of people waiting when we went to Essen, and just for the experience, and it was really hyped up before anyone had even play tested it. At the start,
I'm sure it was play tested.
Sorry.
This game has been play tested.
So hyped at the start, and it was like the top game as soon as it released at Essen, and then it took a little dip, and then now it seems to be going back up again.
It's definitely hot at the moment.
Yeah.
And as we talk now at the start of 2022, this is a hot game. It's very popular, and a lot of people are loving it.
And a lot of people are going to disagree completely with what we say.
Do you know what?
And we know that.
That's okay. If you do disagree, leave it in the comments below. But honestly, for the way we like to play games and the type of games we like to play at 2-player count, I don't think I'd play this at 2-player ever again, other than to try out the accelerated start.
Yeah. And we'll let you know how that goes.
We will.
What are your experiences with this game? How many players have you played with? How do you feel? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Comment below and let us know.
Thank you for your time today. I hope you appreciated and enjoyed this video. If you do, leave us a like and a subscribe.
We're also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Just search for Ludus Vulpes.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.